12. Uninvited Hosts. Going somewhere? The voice brought Inniset up short. Cousin Rind, she whispered as she saw him slide out from behind an arras. You startled me. You're out late, he said. Or is it so late that it's early now? Even in the gloom his face was grubby and had an oily sheen. His eyes bulged like the pale eyes of a lanternfish. He looked uncommonly well fed. Inniset knew that Rind hoped she was engaged on illicit business. She pulled her cloak around her. It barely fitted over the heavy coil of hair on her back. I'm surprised to see you in this part of the house, she said. He edged up close to her and growled, Someone's been thieving from my shrew traps. Your traps? She pulled away as politely as possible. I thought that Cousin Maljamin caught the taffel shrews for the drudges. He used to. What's happened to him? Said Inniset warily. The augury of the rogue card cast a shadow across her thoughts. Anything erring from that usual wearisome burden of candle-day to candle-day life in the house now filled her with foreboding. Gone? He's gone away, said Rind. What? Like the others? Don't know about that. He just took to sitting in his chair and losing interest. Wouldn't talk, wouldn't eat, wouldn't even give me a game of drat. That's when I knew things were really turning windy. Twice I found him in the corner of his room trying to dig a hole. I think he thought he was a shrew as well. And then he disappeared. That's all. Still facing her with a grin, he ambled backward along the passage. Inniset felt the weight on her shoulders. Sometimes her burden was unbearable. It was still growing. Against her better judgment, she set off after Rind. You should have restrained him, she called. You should have known he might go away. Rind had reached the staircase that led down to the disused frontisteries. The banisters had already carried him halfway down when he spat and slid off. Why should I? He said, squinting up at her on the landing above. Maljamin wouldn't have stopped me. We do things differently in the north by northeast wing. Not the same as you grand galleriers. He just went the same as the others, no fuss. Anyhow, he might be happier as a shrew. You should have told me, she scolded, and started to descend the huge steps on foot. You know I keep the tally. You must be the last one left in your wing of the house. Soon there'll be no one left at all. He scratched his head through his oily hair. He had dirty fingernails. She couldn't abide dirty fingernails. She seemed to remember that he had once worked as some sort of food technician to the Time Lord gentry at the capital. You're just worried there'll be no more dinner, he sneered, and started down again. Inniset struggled to negotiate the steps. Nothing so undignified for her as sliding down the banisters. By the time she was halfway down, he was at the foot of the stairs. Be careful, cousin. Something dangerous is happening, she called down. There was an omen in the cards. And you must have heard the clock. Superstition, said Rind. I'm more worried about my traps. Have you seen Awis and Arcu? She said. Together? Awis doesn't count, does he? She reached the landing quite out of breath. Of course he counts. Oh, well, in that case, I defer to your superior wisdom, cousin. I saw both of them 3 candle days ago in the Fungaritum. Glospin was with them too. They were gambling for something. When I asked what, they just laughed and said the highest stakes. He shrugged. Why? What have they done to you? I'm worried that they may have passed on, gone away like Maljamin. Rind gave a rasping guffaw. Arcu might. He's always been on the edge. But you won't get rid of Awis. Not if there's still food about. I must find them, she said. I know something dreadful is going to happen. Don't jump at your own reflection, cousin. It might only be Suthrolope leering out at you. He laughed again and held up a something furry and dead. Feeling peckish, cousin? Anything to offer in exchange? Certainly not, said Inniset, pulling her coat around her. Rind leered and stuffed the animal in one of his many pouches. "I'll tell them if I see them." He sauntered off down the passage, a knotted string of dead shrews dangling and dancing down his back. Chris kicked at the stove with his boot. The metal rang with the blow and the stove snapped its lid aggressively, but the latch stayed jammed. At least it shut up Glospin for a minute. While Chris tried to force the metal door, there had been a barrage of questions. Who was he? Who had sent him? How did he get in? He ignored most of them and was non-committal over the rest. This man, called Glospin, doing solitary inside a stove, was an ID/Undie, undeciphered. He could be a different Gallifreyan with the same name, or that same evil bastard of a Gallifreyan he'd encountered in his dream, only with a different body on. A total body Beppel. The Doctor could regenerate. Chris knew that. His body just seemed to be something he went about in, a concessionary formality to stop the rest of physical reality getting even more confused. So maybe the process came naturally to the rest of his race as well, de rigueur, as the simpering select class of the Overcity would say. "Are you some sort of guard?" began Glospin again. His eye was squinting sideways through the grating. Chris snorted. "You could say that." "Thought so. The clothes don't fool me." "I'm off duty," said Chris. "You're not part of an official rescue party, then? How did you get in? Down the chimney?" "Hardly." Chris had found a rusty pan handle and was trying to jam it into the door. "Which chapter house? You can't be Pridonian. Your face is too honest." He gasped in sudden pain. "What is it?" said Chris. "My legs. No circulation. I can't move in this thing. Get me out of here." The pan handle buckled in Chris's hands and tore one of his fingernails. He yelped in pain and stuck the finger in his mouth. "Get me out now!" Glospin snarled. Chris stood back from the stove. He didn't like that tone. His immediate concern had knocked something vital to the back of his mind. "Better tell me why you've been locked up in there," he said. He saw the eye shift past him to stare along the passage. There was new light coming in from somewhere. "Chris, you're making enough noise to wake the house itself." The Doctor came scuttling out of a different passage. He carried a lamp in one hand, his trousers were soaking wet, and grey powder was streaked over his jacket. "Time to move. The natives are getting—" He was shaking out his dusty hat when he apparently realised that they were not alone. He gave an oily smile and gestured the lamp towards the ceiling. "Of course, there may be a few problems with damp, but the general structure is sound, and it is, you will agree, a most advantageously appointed property with a delightful aspect overlooking the valley." He met the stare of the eye at the grating. "You!" whispered Glospin. The Doctor blew the flame of the lamp out. "It's you!" Glospin's voice was chilled with contempt. "Gods of purgatory, it is you!" "Not necessarily," said the Doctor, pulling down his hat to hide his face in the twilight. He laughed awkwardly. "Have we met? No, don't think so. So sorry, mustache." Chris caught his arm. "You can't leave him in there. He's trapped." "No worse than he deserves, I'm sure." The Doctor yanked himself free. "You!" accused Glospin. "Gods of purgatory, it is you. I'd know that ego anywhere. The bloody bile you have, slinking back in after everything, after all this time." "I'm sure you're making some mistake." The Doctor shot a sidelong glance at Chris. "My friend will explain to you." "Doctor," said Chris, trying to stay calm. The Doctor shushed him. "Doctor, I know." "No, you do not know, Chris." Chris lowered his voice. "Yes, I do. This is your home and your family." The Doctor stepped backward in shock. For a second, Chris thought he was having another heart attack. The magnitude of his statement slammed back in on Chris. The whispering, which died in his head, erupted again in earnest. "Sorry, Roz. There are things that should never get said to your friends. Sorry, sorry." "Sorry, Doctor," he mumbled. The doctor said nothing. He shook a little, as if he refused to accept the statement. Glospin's eye had seen everything. The voice in the stove began to sneer. He thought we'd all be dead by now. He thought he'd left it long enough. Wait until they all know he's here. "Shut up," said Chris. Glospin started to yell. "It's him! He's here! Help me! He's come back! Drudge is—" "Glospin!" shouted the doctor. "Is that you in there?" Glospin went silent. The doctor stared at the grating, eye to eye. A long moment of recognition. Then he turned to Chris. His manner was quiet and grave, like that of a condemned man. "Christopher, keep an eye out along that passage in case anyone else turns up." "Yes, Doctor," said Chris. "I'm sorry. When you want to leave—" The doctor nodded towards the passage he had emerged from. Chris moved away, feeling the doctor's eyes burn into his back as he went. He wasn't even halfway along the dark passage when a wave of nausea broke over him. He stumbled against the wall, his senses swimming. As he went under for the first time, he heard Glospin and the doctor start to argue. "Don't entertain the delusion that anyone wants you back. You've already been replaced." Chris was looking at an airy room lit by orange sunlight. Beyond the window stood the tall towers of some unearthly city. The figure of Glospin, the old man Glospin from the dream, stood between him and the view. Glospin was shouting at him and brandishing a document. "I discovered anomalies in your genetic codings." Chris felt a fury that he did not understand. It took over his every sense. "Nonsense," he heard himself say. But his voice was curiously old and felt like someone else's. He levelled a finger at the outraged Glospin and saw that he wore a jewelled ring. "This is some childish attempt to complete my severance from the family. Aren't you satisfied, Why do you still insist on pestering me?" "You certainly never belonged to Lungbarrow's loom. Exactly who or what are you?" "I'm your cousin," declared the voice in Chris's head. He raised his cane to strike at Glospin, and they were soon brawling like schoolroom rookies. With a crash, a black coffin-like box shot through the solid wall. Glospin backed away as it hovered closer to him. "No!" Chris heard himself shout. The box drove straight at Glospin. There was a cold, white flash. Chris clung to the wall in the dark. As his senses levelled, he could still hear the arguing. There was no love lost between the doctor and Glospin. "What do you mean, did I come down the chimney?" snapped the doctor. "How do you think I got in? I let myself in at the front door." "Really?" retorted Glospin. "As far as the house is concerned, you were cast out long ago, Doctor." "Good," said the doctor. "And from the ramshackle look of the place, it's gone into terminal decline without me." "You'd better ask Sathrope about that." "So, she is still housekeeper. The old harridan could never let go of anything, could she? Even if the house has gone to rack and ruin around her. Who's Kithriark now? I thought you had your sights on the inheritance." "Sathrope will tell you." "Oh no, not if I can help it." His tone levelled to that familiar goading superiority he reserved for his nastiest opponents, usually just prior to wrecking their plans of universal domination. "So, you missed out on your inheritance too, did you? What a pity. After all that effort to get me out of the way. And now you're stuck in a samovar. Let me guess who shut you in there. Just the sort of mealy-mouthed punishment Sathrope would dish out, even to her favourite." "How old are you now, wormhole?" Glospin said. You realise it's 673 years since we last met, to the day. Ah, how quickly others' tide comes round, the doctor mused. And I haven't brought you a present. You were always old for your age. Glospin's sneer turned into a sudden laugh. Of course, others' tide. That fell on your name day, didn't it? You must be at least mind your own business and 4/4. Really? Well, felicitations, cousin. And I haven't brought you a present either. I've never made a fuss about anniversaries, said the doctor. How old are you? 1711. 3 generations. The doctor was silent for a long moment. Careful living, he said, but his voice was flat and downbeat. I didn't have a choice, Glospin said. You look pretty well worn. I'd reckon you're on 5 or 6 generations at least. You've been living too fast. Chris, hissed the doctor, we're going. Chris hauled himself up and started back along the passage. He's not going to let me out, called Glospin. What a way to treat an older cousin. Let him go, Doctor, said Chris firmly, because if you don't, I will. The doctor looked extremely hurt. He walked to the stove and began to pick at the latch. After a moment, he took off his shoe and hit the crossbolt hard. Don't do that, shouted Glospin. Stop it, it's heating up. Chris saw a row of flames in the base of the stove. Doctor, get him out, he'll be roasted alive. Say please, Glospin, said the doctor. Inside the stove's oven, Glospin began to scream. Please, repeated the doctor. Doctor, yelled Chris, please. The doctor grabbed the rusty kettle off the top of the stove and emptied the brackish water over the flames. There was a hiss of steam. They could hear Glospin gasping inside. The doctor produced a metal instrument from his pocket and set it to the latch. There was a slight vroom noise, and the whole front of the stove swung open. Glospin shot out sideways as if he had been kicked. He landed on the tiled floor in a heap. Smoke drifted out of his clothes. A Syrian bottle opener, said the doctor coldly. Satisfied? Thank you, said Chris. Let's go. The stove slammed its oven door in frustration. Chris ignored the doctor and crouched by Glospin. In Earth terms, the cousin now looked to be in his late 30s. His once coarse black hair was now brown and curling. It fell thickly to his shoulders, framing a handsome but thin white face. A red-brown scar on one pale hand extended up his arm. He's hurt, Doctor, Chris said. Glospin pulled back his hand. That happened a long time ago. He glared up accusingly at the doctor. It's never healed properly. The doctor ruminated for a moment. Bring him, he said. He turned and walked away up the passage. I want to be away from here before daybreak. What daybreak? Said Glospin, as he laboured to stand up. He looked after the doctor and began to laugh out loud.